Starting to roll in. All right, but I'll go ahead and start. On behalf of the Veterans Resource Center here at American River College, I want to thank you all for joining us for the CalTap webinar on transforming mental health. For those who don't know me, my name is Robert Smith. I am the outreach, basically outreach specialist for the Veterans Resource Center here at American River College. For those that are joining us across the state, American River College is in Sacramento, and it's part of the Los Rios Community College District, which is one of the biggest college districts in California. Our Veterans Resource Center is basically a one-stop shop for services for our veterans and their families in attendance at American River College. And of course, we have partnered with CalTap and their amazing team to help provide information and resources to our student veterans and their families, and of course, you in attendance with amazing information such as this. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it on to Kirk Euler of CalTap. Kirk.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Kirk Euler. I'm a training coordinator here with the California Department of Veteran Affairs CalTap unit. I'd like to also thank the American River College Veteran Resource Center and the Vet Center of Sacramento for partnering with us today for this webinar on mental health and transforming mental health. So I'd like to go over some brief overview of what the CalTap program is. And then this gives you just a real insight on what your California benefits are here in the state of California as a veteran. And then we're going to move on to our link coordinator, Cole Wagner, on what his roles and responsibilities are and how he can assist in this local region. And then we'll turn it over to Dr. Jeffrey Cass and Albert Revives for the Vet Center to go over what they do here in Sacramento. So the CalTap program was designed to inform California vet benefits of all eras, what their earned state and federal benefits are, and then also provide that continuum of care over time as those needs change. And how we do that is with our 5 pathways, which is the core curriculum, education, employment, and entrepreneurship. There's also a 5th pathway for service providers if you're interested in training or learning about how to care for veterans. We also ask that you would provide this continued support in many ways. You can provide a non-DoD email at caltab@calvet.ca.gov. You can register for My CalVet on our homepage, and you can also receive our newsletter by registering that. And you can add CalVet Veteran Services on social media. There's a QR code to the right with all our social media links, and then you can attend webinars like this. We also ask that you take some time to fill out the webinar survey, which the link is available there, and QR code. We take this information very seriously, and we use that feedback to provide continuous improvement in our webinars and providing the essential needs that you're looking for this virtual type of reality. So if you go to CalVet's website, and you click on CalTap, you'll find this is our portal for CalTap. And at the bottom of the page that's highlighted there, you'll see a link for archived webinars. You can access that for various topics of webinars we've done recordings for throughout the last 2 years. With that in regard, I would like to mention that this webinar itself is being recorded. So please be aware that you can access this at a later time as well. This is some of the highlights of your California benefits as a veteran in California. Obviously, one of the most popular ones are our college tuition fee waiver. You can also have your designation of veteran put on your driver's license, motor vehicle registration fee waiver, reduced fishing and hunting license for eligible veterans, no cost state park pass, and then there's also a property tax exemption for disabled veterans of 100% service connected, total and permanent. On the right-hand side, you'll see a list of all of our veterans divisions in California and at CalVet. I urge you all to go on our website and look through these different divisions on some of the advocacy and outreach that they provide and support for veterans here in the state of California. We have long-term care homes as well as 3 state cemeteries throughout the state, our Women Veterans Division and our Minority Veterans Division. excellent divisions with a lot of great benefits for California veterans. If you have any questions about any of the specific benefits listed on this slide, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us in the Q&A portion, and we can address them further at the end. But we would, for time purposes, we like to focus on the topic of the day, which is transforming mental health. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. Also, this is our veteran resource book. My colleague Janet is going to put a link for this book in the chat. I highly encourage you to download a copy of this to your mobile device. It's accessible at your fingertips, and there's a lot of great information in there. You can also note the VA websites, va.gov has access to your benefits as well. And you can access this information, and you can contact me at my email address here, the phone number, our 800 number, and then our social media is also there. So now I'm going to turn it over to our link coordinator, Cole Wagner, and he's going to go over some of the benefits and roles that he does here in the state in Northern California. Thank you for doing this, Cole.
No problem, Kirk. Thank you for having me. As Kirk mentioned, I'm the local interagency network coordinator. It's kind of a long title, but I kind of like to summarize it as someone who connects resources to people and resources to other resources. So next slide, please, Kirk. So if you see here on the map, this is a map of California, and what we've done is we've divided the state into 8 general geographic regions, and we have assigned a local resource coordinator, like myself, to each one of those regions, so that that person can become well-versed and knowledgeable about the resources that are available in that region. And so if you've been in California for a while, you know that California being such a huge state, there's a lot of different resources available in different areas. And so it's very helpful to have somebody who's local, who understands what's going on in your area, to help connect you to a resource. If you have a question about how to access it, or you want to get in touch with somebody there, the link's position, the link's job is to make sure that they know somebody that's there and that they can put you in touch with somebody that's there to help you explain the resources and get signed up. The other thing that a link is also helpful with is just being aware of what resources are available in case the veteran doesn't know. So if a veteran is having an issue and they want to know if there's some resource that can help them solve that problem, the link might be somebody that they can reach out to and get that answer, get connected to a benefit. Next slide, please. So we provide service outreach to service members, veterans, and their families. Never forget those family members that also have questions about benefits and are eligible for benefits. And then we also make those referrals to those service providers, assist with local emergencies, and then leadership and advocacy in local communities. That's one of those things, making sure that all these different folks that are doing great things for veterans across California are in contact with each other, are talking to one another, and make sure that we're working together. Next slide, please. Some of the folks that we're working with, we're talking to the Employment Development Department and Work for Warriors as far as employment. We're talking to the county veteran service offices for state and federal veteran benefits, other state agencies that we're coordinating with to make sure that we're delivering benefits, and then especially the healthcare. So VA hospitals, medical centers, clinics, VA vet centers like the vet center in Sacramento, and pretty much anybody that's doing anything for veterans. We're trying to make sure that veterans can get in touch with them. Next slide, please. So this is my contact information. I'm listed here because I am very closely coordinated with the vet center at in Sacramento, and also with the Veterans Resource Center at American River College here in Northern California. However, as the slide mentioned, and they put in a link in the chat to the map, but there is a link that lives in your area that understands your area. So take a look at that map, find out who your link is, and if you have questions, you can always get in touch with them, or you can get in touch with me and I'll get you to the right spot. That's my email on there. That's my direct line for my mobile phone, which is almost always on me. And so I am very happy to help and look forward to hearing from anybody that has questions. I'm very excited about this webinar, a very important topic, and we have some very amazing resources online today to talk us through it.
Thank you, Cole. Cole is a great resource in the Northern Valley area. Thank you for your presentation today. Now we're going to turn it over to the Vet Center, and I believe we have Dr. Jeffrey Cass, who's going to be providing some keynote topics on mental health and transforming your mental health. Dr. Cass, thank you for joining us today. I think you're still muted. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Albert,
You can.
you bet. Albert, did you want me to go ahead, or did you want to take a moment?
Go ahead, and then I'll
Okay.
come in the last few slides.
Sounds real good. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Cass. I'm a psychologist here at the Sacramento Vet Center, and very grateful for this opportunity to spend a little time with you all, looking at what's going on within the field of mental health, specifically for veterans and active duty members. And I will share with y'all, it's something that's kind of coming somewhat full circle for myself. My career with the military was about 30 years ago, back in the early 90s when I served in the Air Force. And at that time, found myself in the midst of a RIF, which had a lot of personnel at a Air Force base out in the middle of a high desert, Edwards Air Force Base, looking at what was going to happen with this RIF in terms of active duty members transitioning into civilian life. We come again almost full circle where I find myself today at the Vet Center, previously over at the Department of Veteran Affairs here in Northern California. And I've come to realize that within the mental health field, they're really realizing what this all is, a population that will probably best served where we can meet veterans and active duty members where they are, instead of asking them to come to us. And I'll go into some detail about what I mean regarding this idea of where mental health in terms of the field moving and shifting towards, again, able to meet us where we're at, as opposed to you all having to accommodate whatever traditionally has been practiced, largely based on a medical model. I'll take a couple minutes just, and really with the slides I am presenting, bear with me. I'm not one who tends to look to try to attach labels or a diagnosis to what's going on for one who is, whether they're transitioning from military life into the civilian setting or even while serving on active duty. Really, my intent is just to bring to light what these disruptions might look like. But as they're attached to some sort of label or diagnosis, it's really simply with the intent of highlighting the fact it's a means by which those of us in the profession can communicate a little bit what's going on for those that we're seeing here at the Vet Center or over at the VA. But again, I really would ask of you all not to look at this as somehow of a stigmatizing nature. Again, 30 years ago in the middle of a RIF, as many were experiencing some life adjustment changes out at Edwards. Very often my work was, quite frankly, to kind of validate or normalize some of the disruptions that were going on at that time. Much as my work here at the Vet Center, very similar to that today, where it's times, again, when I say validating, simply making it known what disruptions that may be going on day to day or to be anticipated, to be expected. But we'll certainly talk about some resources as well that you might consider accessing. Again, more on your time instead of having to accommodate systems. I don't mean to speak for Cole, given his experiences in his role, but for some of you that may or may not have come into contact with the VA, here in the North Valley, we have staff admittedly available, but we're tremendously understaffed. And so you'll see my resources are speaking of some organizations outside the VA, and at times even outside the Vet Center, although we'll take a couple minutes to highlight what's going on here in Sacramento, as well as what's going on across vet centers here in Northern California as well. So if I might move to the next slide. It's been identified through some research, through some studies, 3 areas where this, if not transition from military to civilian life, or where we find ourselves now in the civilian sector, our time served may have been impacted in some way. And each of these areas or concerns are not going to bring any sort of aha moment, but maybe it might shed a light a little bit if you're finding or have experienced some disruptions, or family members bringing to light possibly where this adjustment has been somewhat difficult. So I might move to the next slide. And one of the primary health concerns, and again, this probably does not come to any sort of surprise, is the fact that we do look at PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, of which I'll share with you. Unfortunately, my slide's a bit dated in that it speaks of a study back in 2014, where it was found that for those of us who have served in whatever capacity, and I'll highlight the fact this does not need to reflect those of us who may or may not have ever served in theater. PTSD has been broadened as a diagnosis to look at events that even include or being in the presence of some sort of traumatic event, as opposed to being directly impacted by that. What do I mean by that in terms of something what might be day to day? Well, it's not infrequent that I'll come across veterans here at the Vet Center who will speak of their involvement where they found themselves out of specialty, having to tend to situations that, quite frankly, were something mentally or emotionally one would not easily prepare for. A case in point, I've had veterans speak of time when they served carrying litters for the injured, although their specialty was in avionics with the helicopters. I've learned of circumstances again where fortunately the outcome was good and that they weren't injured, but learning of personnel who were not trained to drive a C-class truck, taking truck transports across fields of IEDs. And needless to say, it being an extremely upsetting, maybe to the point of almost traumatizing type of event. Part of why my study is a bit dated as well is that we're learning more and more, and we will see a statistic around this. The PTSD also covers areas such as military sexual trauma, both male and female and the like, impacted in ways that we're only now, because as you all may imagine, what comes with military sexual trauma, unfortunately, is stigma, is issues that really have direct impact and bearing on one's career and one's circumstances while serving in the military. As noted again with the data here, it's been found about 25% of women have been subjected. And again, when I speak of military sexual trauma, this does not need to entail some sort of act of victimization, be it physically, it can be verbal. And about 1 in 100 men subjected to some sort of, again, military sexual trauma. This is a population that we here at the Vet Center primarily work with in different capacities. Again, I'll go into some detail of what that might look like a little bit later in the presentation. But with that, I'd like to move to the next slide. Oh, I'm wondering if I might back up to one slide. Oh, sorry. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll see if there's a third slide. Another concern is traumatic brain injury. Again, this can come in the form of not even finding one in theater. This can be in the course of basic training. We're learning more and more, unfortunately, where there are concussive events, whether it's being struck in the head, whether it's, again, through explosions and the like. As you can see, and part of what that looks like, because when we learn of something, of a diagnosis called traumatic brain injury, it's really difficult to know what that looks like day to day, what's identifiable. And so part of this slide is to bring to light, it's not uncommon for those who've been subjected to some sort of injury to the brain. They experience headaches, and this can be subsequent to the event itself, or it can be several months out that these headaches were experienced. There can be a fatigue and drowsiness. The memory problems can follow us depending on the nature of the injury to the brain. And there is not uncommon too, those around us experiencing us in terms of either mood changes or mood swings. And that can sometimes manifest, reveal itself in the terms of some sort of agitation, impulsivity, and even in the forms of something clinical like depression. As you see, there's been about over 400,000, a little bit above 400,000 TBIs that have been diagnosed within more formal healthcare systems. What I would suggest to you is there's probably a considerably larger number that have been undetected, because quite frankly, in education on TBIs has been somewhat lacking. And so part of this slide is to just bring to light if any of what you observe here, what it looks like symptomatically, maybe your experience, but have not gone in to see someone or followed up, something to be encouraged. Good, I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm going to backtrack and just take a moment as well. There was a slide I also wanted to bring to light that speaks of also the area of depression. And this is not uncommon, again, for those not only in the course of their service, but transitioning into civilian life. Again, I refrain from suggesting something clinical. It's more intended to communicate what very often tends to be the experience of this life transition. As we all know, in our capacity, having served, the military is a major life change. Upon our returning back to the civilian sector, as we all know, it impacts us across all facets of our life, whether it's reintegrating with family, whether it's heading to school or back to school, whether it's occupationally, the environments in which we might find ourselves in. So where I share this is again, realize there are some disruptions day to day. And what that looks like is there can be things such as disruptions in sleep, energy levels, focus or concentration. We may notice not any sort of permanent sort of mood changes, but we may notice at times the tendency sometimes to dip in terms of feeling low or feeling down, feeling somewhat isolated. Certainly our experience in the military is unlike anything in the civilian sector. It's not often that we do find ourselves amongst other members of the tribe, that meaning other veterans and or their family members, as we launch again into our civilian lives. Again, in a few minutes, I'll talk a little bit in some detail of where for myself, this idea of maybe transforming the practice of mental health might look at times a reuniting or rejoining of veterans in some form to support each other. What you're looking at relative to the general population when we speak of depression is about a tenfold likelihood that there will be some sort of change in mood. Again, not clinically where we would necessarily require counseling or medication, but it is a precursor, needless to say, for sometimes when it reaches a point clinically where it's interrupting our lives day to day and can be a predisposing factor towards suicidal thoughts or ideations, possibly acts as well. So with the slide in front of you, again, with taking a look at where accessing care in the area of mental health has potential barriers, despite what's been communicated by DoD about mental health contact, whether it's as far back as when I was serving in the early 90s, I would suggest to you even today, there continues to be the stigma of what it means to need some sort of help when it relates to something going on emotionally or mentally for us. There is still certainly societal messages as well, despite the public service announcements out there about the need for mental health or something going on for us. As I shared a moment ago, in terms of receiving care, it's become more and more difficult to do so. Again, unfortunately, here in Northern California and in the North Valley in particular, the staffing issue has been very paramount. The VA is trying to address it, but it's been slow in ramping up and getting staff to meet the needs. Some of it, again, can be a lack of understanding of what it looks like day to day when our lives are being interrupted in a way that maybe comparing some notes with someone, maybe seeking some sort of peer support or a combination of the two might have some value. And then of course, yes, here in the North Valley, for some of us that find ourselves in the foothills, that find ourselves in parts of the valley where that access is hard to come by, whether it be something formal in the way of VA care or vet center care, or something in the community that potentially can be an issue as well. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. What I've got listed here are some resources. And again, a number of them are quite frankly out in the community. What came to my attention while I was at the VA is that in those seeking those services and seeking that care with some of the long waits, with the points in between with visits, with also, although community of care may be access to someone in the private sector, there continuing to be the issue of long waiting lists. My belief is in accessing some sort of resource can be as important as sitting down and talking with someone, just to know there's someone or somewhere you can reach out to. To bring to light, the Veterans Crisis Line does have a peer specialist program now. In contacting them, this is not where one needs to, as a veteran, contact the crisis line in a crisis. I don't know at some point whether the peer specialist program will have some sort of departure from the crisis line contact or number that's listed there. But I've had a couple veterans here at the vet center who have found peer specialists. They are trained in a formal capacity. They do require some form of certification. They have found it very useful. It is a 24/7 service that can be accessed at any time. And upon contacting the 800 number, you simply make it known you'd like to speak to a peer specialist. That being said, if you find yourself in some sort of situation that feels somewhat desperate, please do understand that the Veterans Crisis Line is not an emergency call. It's not requiring them to have some sort of call out to a local crisis line or having someone come knocking on your door. Really, it's intended just to be a service should you have at some point in time where it's not possible to access someone in a formal capacity because of time or distance or the like. Please do know the Veterans Crisis Line is one really that can be a resource center. And very often they do some problem solving online where you can find yourself able to get to some resources. There's the National Veterans Foundation as well. It's somewhat similar to the Veterans Crisis Line. The Veterans Crisis Line is through the VA. The National Veterans Foundation is actually a nonprofit organization. They as well have certified staff that can do some crisis management where they're available 24/7. Unlike the crisis line, it is staffed by veterans, which for some, there tends to be more of a receptivity, maybe a more sense of connectedness in finding yourself in contact with fellow veterans. There's also the Veterans for Warriors, and I will share with you each of these resources I have vetted, spoke to some of their leadership to get some detailed information about their programs. The Vets for Warriors is an organization that I've had a couple of veterans reach out to when they weren't able to access care. And again, offer peer support. Do also provide for any of you that know of active duty members. And I would really ask of each of you, if yourself personally aren't feeling a need today to follow up with any of these resources, anyone that you may come across, that you might learn, might be in need, please, I would encourage and ask of you all to be an extension of what we're trying to do here at the Vet Center, what they're trying to do at the VA and reaching veterans as best we can. Quite frankly, you all are the best form of contact with veterans out there in the community. And I don't mean to burden you with that responsibility, but just as a plea, would ask maybe if you should come across a veteran or active duty member that's in need, any of these resources, please, if you would forward to them. And again, what's a bit unique with the Veterans for Warriors program is, again, they are a resource outside of the DoD where active duty members can require confidential peer support. I was going to mention too, with the Veterans Crisis Line, both the peer support and the line itself, that is a confidential arrangement. However, through the crisis line itself, if there is any conversation with you or someone they're speaking with, forwarding with information, should someone be part of the healthcare system with the VA, there is some notation usually to inform your provider if there was some contact with their program. So I should make it known it's confidential within the VA healthcare system, but just know there is that contact. There's an organization where you have licensed providers in the community. We have them here in Northern California, although Given Hour is a nationwide nonprofit organization where you have licensed providers in the community offering free counseling pro bono. And on their website, they have a listing where providers are both doing face-to-face as well as virtual visits. Quite frankly, I did not think to ask of them whether their service is available by phone. My belief is it likely is because they are doing virtual appointments in addition to face-to-face, as California is starting to reduce the restrictions in terms of face-to-face contact. Homecoming for Veterans is also a nonprofit organization that really has been able to expand in terms of what they're able to offer. Again, it's a nonprofit organization staffed by certified and licensed providers. They originally started as offering free counseling, but they now provide something that's becoming more and more mainstream in terms of a practice referred to as neurofeedback. And what neurofeedback is there's been evidence to show the connection between the mind and the body, and what goes on for us emotionally and mentally can be accessed in a way physiologically with brainwave activity where we have more of the ability to kind of act on any sort of what I refer to reactivity when we find ourselves sometimes amped up emotionally, that we're able to practice in a way physically. What does that look like? Well, one of the more simple examples is maybe the use of controlling our breath, or maybe doing some sort of version of a mindfulness or meditative practice, but having something in the way of some sort of feedback to learn and look at what goes on for us physiologically that can help separate a little bit when we come across some sort of stimulus, some sort of activating situation that might find us then, whether again be some sort of emotional response or even physical response. A lot of the work has been done, as you would imagine, in the area of PTSD in particular. And again, this is something without cost. And then, of course, myself here as a staff member, and Albert will go into some detail. We have veteran centers across Northern California. We here in Sacramento have it both at Howe Avenue here, as well as the Citrus Heights Vet Center. And really our intent is to reach out to veterans. And again, I'll have Albert to go into more detail around those, when I say eligible, around certain criteria in which our services are available. That being said, That being said, we have the good fortune here at the Vet Center, though, to be able to reach out to veterans in the community in ways too that don't necessarily entail counseling work, necessarily involve therapy. We are given the ability to be out in the community as a resource agency, if whether we're able to actually follow up with you all or to be able to point you in different directions as to where whatever that care might be that you, and I will share with you what's unique about the Vet Center, unlike the VA as well, where we're able to provide services to family members as well. And that is somewhat unique. Now, at the VA, there is the ability for veterans, if there are some issues around you and your partner, or they're able to offer some brief couples work. But unfortunately, they don't have the ability to offer family therapy, where that is something available at your vet centers. So with that, let me maybe move to the next slide. Part of my intent with this talk, and again, I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment about where we're trying to reach veterans, wherever you might find yourself in your journey, whether you're recently transitioning from the military or here in Northern California, where we do have a larger percentage of older veterans, whether it's Vietnam or in my case, post-Gulf War. Where maybe we can reach you all, or you're willing to reach out to other veterans or active duty members. Very often my experience has been in knowing that there are some resources out there that are immediately available, that can be almost as therapeutic as possibly finding yourself involved in some program or sitting down and talking with someone in a counseling session. It's been a brief time. I've only been here at the Vet Center since October of 2021. But I'm quite struck in the veterans that I have come across that very often the nature of our work is not terribly time intensive, nor does it need to be so. Because very often what I am learning is in simply providing some information, providing some education, that in and of itself can be as valuable as whether it's diving deep into some issues that may be ongoing for a veteran. And it's not to suggest that that isn't available. That, of course, is the case, whether that be individually or with some of the groups, or in a moment, I'll share with you some other programs that are starting to incorporate complementary and alternative care that's increasingly becoming more and more the modality that both the vet centers and VAs are looking to reach veterans. But the idea of prevention, or again, when we look at the idea of life change, really the idea of it not having to be the traditional mental health therapy, frequent, sometimes lengthy treatment protocols, but simply checking in with veterans when there may be that need, as there may be some disruptions in their day-to-day life. The real push in vet centers and at the VA is the idea of recovery. The idea, again, where maybe the veteran can feel more inclined to act on their circumstances instead of having to react. It entails some, more problem-solving approaches. It entails, again, sometimes more of the briefer short-term work, but knowing the door is always open as issues arise. Again, looking at family dynamics, as we all know, what goes on for us has that ripple effect throughout the family, through those around us. And it may be at times, whatever disruptions are going on for us rightfully impacts our families directly. Again, some of these programs that are being offered, especially at the vet center, are specific to family members. For some of you, if not many of you, whatever can be done to simply be taking care of ourselves, maybe in a way where we can talk in terms of wellness, or simply maintaining whatever you are doing to take care of yourselves. And maybe whether that's in the form of specific programs, or again, knowing of resources out there to maintain whatever lifestyle practices you have, not only physically, But when it comes to the mind and when it comes to what goes on for us emotionally, that has increasingly been a focus as well. And I would suggest to you, for any of the older veterans, myself included, promoting health and wellness doesn't have to start in our youth. It can happen at any point in time in our lives. So with that, I'll go on to the next slide. So in a moment, I'll turn the floor over to Albert, but I did want to bring to light some things going on here at the Sacramento Vet Center. These are actually ongoing programs, really intended to kind of, again, highlight areas such as, if not promotion, prevention, health promotion, wellness. Knowing, again, for some, there may be something needed in the way of more intensive counseling work. But currently we have an ongoing yoga group. Really the practice and the idea, and many of these are geared towards what's now referred to as complementary or alternative practices, what used to be called holistic practices. Really, the intent is twofold. One, a means by which we can impact some of this reactivity, some of what may be going on for us emotionally and mentally, by taking a few moments over the course of a day to get in touch with maybe what's going on with our body, to maybe put to practice a little yoga stretch. Or maybe it is finding ourselves making a little bit of time, practice a little music therapy, to strum the guitar, to learn a few chords. We do have meditation groups, both in person, and myself will be doing a virtual mindfulness group. Realize that these meditation practices are not espousing any sort of religious practices commonly identified with, for instance, Buddhism or Eastern religious practices. It's more moved into the mainstream with the idea of mindfulness, of the idea of, again, just attending to a moment in time, to maybe experience things maybe in a less judgmental way, to really see what we can do to turn down the wick a little bit, whatever may be going on emotionally or physically for us. We've got now a bocce ball group. For some of you that are not familiar with bocce ball, it's a particular game over in Italy in particular, but over in Europe. As you can see, it's relatively simple. It's rolling a ball towards a little white ball to see who can get it closest. But really, each of these environments are hoping to encourage veterans coming into contact with each other, maybe helping a little bit. Not where you're going to form fast friends, but maybe helping a little bit with decreasing some of the isolation we tend to experience. Maybe some opportunities to kind of do some socializing in an environment that's not requiring much more than just some casual conversation. We have the good fortune at the Vet Center too of the Empathetic Touch program. And it really kind of looking at the idea of where there are certified therapist practitioners, simply tap into a little bit the idea of maybe us generating something in terms of energy in some way, and helping kind of move that in a way that lends itself to less feeling burdened or taxed or fatigued. And lastly, the Tai Chi, which is somewhat similar to yoga. What's somewhat nice about the Tai Chi is it tends to be a little bit more gentle in its movements, again, incorporating the mind and the body together. One of the things, and I'll again take a moment here now to turn over the floor to Albert, but one of the things I alert veterans to is that do realize when we went through basic, it was really important for the mind and body to be able to respond in a way that if we were ever in a highly stressed, life-threatening situation in combat or in theater, we knew how to respond. What do I mean by that? Well, whether we had somebody barking in our face, whether we were taking runs at 3 a.m, we were needed to be subjected to the fight or flight reaction. Because when that came about, if or not we ever did find ourselves in combat or in theater, again, we would have deconditioned ourselves to stressing out, to overreacting, whatever that might mean. Our leaving the military doesn't turn that off. We will be ones who will find ourselves more inclined to react physically, or more inclined to react mentally or emotionally sometimes to situations, whether or not that's bringing some sort of trigger from an event when we served, or just the mere fact we're that much more sensitized to these experiences. And so my sharing that with you all is, again, with the intent to kind of promote the idea of, again, whatever this reaching out might look like for you, to give it some thought, whether it be, again, in the form of some of these resources I shared a little bit earlier, or maybe joining us with some of these programs that just help, again, to bring us back in touch with the mind and body, where we can act on that overreactivity, where we can act on that fight or flight reaction instead of it taking control of us. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Albert, and I will take a look in the chat to see if there are any questions. And with that, bear with me as I direct my gaze to the computer. So Albert, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Cass.
Sure.
Thank you for this. This is our last slide. I want to thank everybody I want to thank you guys for your service, of course. Here at the Sacramento Vet Center, Dr. Cass has, he has put out a lot of a plethora of what we do here, especially with the prevention and how we do things in the community. Currently, right now, with us as a Vet Center program, we're allowed to go on active duty basis. And going back to the prevention part to it and transforming mental health is that, for example, I'm there doing TAP briefings for these individuals that are getting out. I want to make sure that that stigma is broken. Even going back to saying that as an active duty member, you could be coming into any vet center nationwide. If you have any mental health, issues you want to put forth, anything from divorce to anything that's military related, depression, anxiety, whatever that you feel that you want to come in and talk about, which you cannot talk to your command, to your spouse, your significant other, your friends, and you want it to put it in front of a professional. We're here for you. We keep things by far congressionally ordered now to keep everything in-house. It goes to no one. For example, I've had a Master Chief walked in today, Navy Master Chief, and and he's part of the recruiting area for in touch with us in our area in Northern California. And what I told him was something that he didn't quite understand, and this is the stigma that we're talking about, is that he's been seeing mental health outside, and it leaked out, per se leaked out to his command. Now here at the vet centers, we're congressionally to hold the sessions here and will stay here. That's why we're in that part of the VA system that can see active duty and their families, like Dr. Cass has said. You do not have to be married to the servicemen or servicewomen to be part of the therapy process here at the vet centers. The greatest thing is also Dr. Cass has mentioned, is that we are a staff of veterans who understands what you have been through boot camp, through the service going overseas, stateside. And hopefully we're going out there and promoting what we do at the vet centers. And going back to that Master Chief I was talking about, he's going to sit down, he's going to talk to his command. To get us in front of his sailors, those who are signing up, those who have been lifers, for those who don't understand what lifers are, retirement, you're going towards retirement, to put our program in front of these individuals to make sure that the stigma of mental health is broken. We make sure that we understand going through those doors, because here at the Sacramento Vet Center, you could walk through those doors and see a person face to face. Since COVID hit, I want to safely say that when the VA closed down their doors, we've been open. We have opened our doors. So with that, we're doing a lot of things in the community, going out to stand downs, going out to, I'll go to Travis Air Force Base, going out to Beale Air Force Base and promoting what we do at the vet centers. And we go on like NOSC and BT Collins here. We do that to make sure that the stigma has been broken. And also that we want to say thank you again for your service to everybody. And for those who are trying or looking into signing up for service, once you sign up, we're here for you. If you'd like to understand more about, how the service has impacted our lives as servicemen, reservists, veterans, we have a plethora of that information here at the Vet Center. We do have front desk work who are recently departed the active duty, what we call work studies here, that are recently know the ins and outs of what has happened when they have received their DD-214, and don't forget that there's such thing as a DD-215. But with that, I wanted to close this out with a thank you to Calvet.
May I share one other point too that's very important
Yes,
for
sir.
everyone to know? And I'm sorry I didn't share this a moment ago. I know for many of you, you have your day-to-day lives, you have work, you have school, you have family. One of the attractions for me coming to the Vet Center is there is after hours. So we do have staff here, sometimes early evenings. We have someone on staff on Saturdays. We also have the ability, if it's not possible to find the time coming to the center, to meet with you virtually or to meet with you by telephone as well. We welcome, we would wish to see you face to face, but we know sometimes that's very difficult. So realize we're available during off-duty hours. We're available where it's convenient for you all as well. And that's simply, you just simply let us know if that to be the case. So just again, realize the accessibility is there at any point in time, short within reason. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Albert, but just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
That's important. I missed that. But thank you, Dr. Cass. With that, I want to thank Calvet, ARC, on hosting this webinar. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robert and Kirk and Jenna. Thank you again.
Dr. Cass, thank you very much. Albert, we all appreciate you guys partnering with us today for this webinar. And again, thank you, Robert, for allowing us to partner with us and host it for American River College. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jana, and she's been running the chat and putting some resources in there and monitoring the Q&A portion. So I'll let her address some of the questions if we've gotten any come up. Jana?
Thank you, Kirk. We didn't get any questions, but we did get one of our attendees did say what you said about the fight or flight is so profound. And I wanted to read that because you're so spot on. I mean, that comment was great. So thank you guys so much for all of your resources and all this information. This has been just a really great webinar. So, but I don't have any questions, Kirk. If anything does come in, I will be sure to interrupt you and let you know. But yeah, no questions yet.
Thank you very much. Everyone, this is everybody's contact information for your convenience on one slide. So we have put the PDF of this presentation in the chat so that you should be able to download these slides as well as the contact information for your future use. And then also, like I mentioned, this is being recorded. So we'll have this posted up on the Calvet YouTube channel, and it will also be available in our archived webinars from our website. So give you guys a minute more here on this slide presentation on the slides. And then also I did want to go back and mention again our survey. Please do take the time to provide that feedback because we want to continuously improve our webinars to make sure that we're meeting your needs as the veterans. This is for you to enhance your benefits and your ability to access those benefits and services. So any kind of feedback that you get and how we can provide a better avenue or research for you to get that, we're here to do that. So take that time to fill out that survey. I'll go back to this slide in just a minute. I would also like to mention some upcoming webinars that we have for Calvet. We have Becoming an Apprentice next week, some college hours, and then also another one, I believe, with American River College at the end of the month for legal services. So Robert will be available, and we'll have another training coordinator for that. We also have one on the 24th for employment tips for getting a federal job, and then women veterans resources on the 18th. So some really good events coming up, and then you can see those again at our website from Eventbrite. You can access those and register online. And with that being said, this is our contact information again, and our QR codes for our social media. You can reach out to CalTap directly through email, and the email is listed there at calvet.ca.gov. And again, Calvet, on behalf of everyone here in the CalTap unit and California Department of Veteran Affairs, we want to thank you for your service. Robert, did you want to say anything as we close out, or did you just want to?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming in attendance today, and you guys doing an amazing job. And thank you, Dr. Cass, for your presentation. It was very enlightening and well put together. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Well, on behalf of Calvet, we want to thank you all for joining us, and we will be signing off. Thank you for your service, and we will see you again.